So our panel discussion today is how to adapt to consumer behavior and new technologies while maintaining a strong consumer focus. Consumer behavior, as we all know, has changed dramatically in the face of COVID-19. If you don't plan for the future today, you may find yourself tomorrow just being a little bit too late to the game. COVID-19 has disrupted how businesses how businesses is done, and how customers are engaging with different brands and the channels that they prefer to communicate with. Customers have more choices today, of course, than ever before. More information, plenty more touch points, and more options are changing the way we purchase. This puts the customer and the consumer firmly in the driver's seat throughout the buying process. To remain competitive in today's business world, organizations must adapt to these changes and the continuous change of customer behavior and deliver an agile, personalized experience across all channels and touch points. So that's going to be sort of the flavor of our discussion today. Please make sure that you use the chat to ask us any questions, and we'll work through this together. Introducing the panel, I have Marit Setia, who we've just had in a lovely session before, Senior Vice President, Growth Markets from Indogene, India, and Azelna Jones, Group Marketing Executive, Burger King in South Africa.
Hi, everyone.
A couple of people are saying there is, hello everybody. A couple of people are saying there is some feedback, so I might just remove this headset.
So we can't hear you anymore.
No sound?
Still no sound, Tony.
No.
Yeah, it probably has to re-log in.
Okay, is that better?
Oh,
That's
yeah.
better.
All right, we'll have to go with the, tried to fix up that feedback, so I don't know what's happening there. First, we had a great presentation from Marit there before. One of the things that stood out to me, 70% of patients cancelled or deferred their treatments due to COVID-19 that we were sharing. Azelna, have you found any changes at all in the way your consumers purchase during COVID-19?
Tony, what we found is that the general purchasing landscape changed, with consumers being exposed to a mix of digital touchpoints. The customer expectation of what constitute as a basic digital capabilities have shifted. For example, 14% of shoppers are now making payments through social media. So I think it's these digital transactions and digital engagements that we are paying close attention to, because this will drive customer relationships. I think a lot of media agencies recommend a portion of their client TV budget to be shifted to personalized digital communication.
Yes, very true. I know go-to-market strategies are already shifting and were shifting even before COVID. Maybe Marit, could you share with us how your marketing's kind of shifted during and since? I know you shared with us some aspects of what's been happening right now, but how have you kind of shifted budgets maybe towards online purchasing, which has been a huge, big growth phase over this COVID period?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there is a definite shift in terms of the way we are spending our money. It'll be naive to say that we are not moving towards digital. In fact, most of our platforms are now being shifted to digital. In-person conferences have completely given up. We've given up on them. What is also changing is that, again, like I was saying, we always used to believe that healthcare is a high-touch industry, but we're realizing that as much as we would like to go meet people in person, these virtual interactions are being equally effective. And more customers are asking us to move our touch points to digital, because they're also realizing that the efficacy of these is much higher than what we used to have earlier. So while I don't think that we are ever going to go into a pre-COVID world, I do feel that this is going to continue. What's going to change is that our mix and the kind and the type of interaction are going to change more from more change toward more a knowledge sharing driven mode, which is even more effective when you think from digital standpoint, digital media standpoint.
Yeah, well, just off the back of that as well, just bringing in everybody's on the call. So there's some active questions. I'm going to weave them into our conversation today. But staying with you just for a second there, Marut, some US companies have been using digital marketing for patient recruiting in South Africa. Any data has been part of, it says any data has been part of this since 2017, both email and SMS marketing. What time being, sorry, with time being a key factor, how will the studies impact on this now, if you understand that question?
Yeah, I don't know if they're talking about patient studies. So there are two ways of thinking about this, right? One is patient recruitment and putting them in a trial. And one is patient recruitment to adhere to a therapy. And both of them are seeing a significantly different trend, if you will. When you think of patient recruitment for a trial, the trend, which probably started in the middle of this decade, so 2015 onwards, was more driven by advancement in precision medicine. And that trend continues even today, just that the acceleration towards getting more and more remote patients for trials has just increased because of COVID. And we see that trend continuing in the future. In fact, the acceleration is going to be just much higher. On the patient recruitment, which is more towards adherence, what is happening is that the cost of dropouts from a therapy area is now being looked at more as a society cost than just as a cost to a individual person or a company. And just to give you one example, for example, TB, which is still big in India, in parts of Africa. The cost was always looked at, how do you make sure that people stay in the system and there are revenues linked to it? Now we are looking at, because a lot of the in-person camps and stuff is not happening, what is the cost of this dropout of patient to society in terms of propagation of that disease? So those models have changed, and I see them continuing at increasing at the rate much higher than what we saw in the past.
Awesome, and I think obviously, as we all know, COVID has made us all stay home a little bit more, different levels of COVID. As I know, someone made a comment on there that they'd read somewhere that people were now cooking more at home because they were at home. Have you seen that's affected any of your kind of sales projections at Burger King, with people trying to create dare I say, their own burgers at home?
Yes, Tony, so the immediate effect of COVID saw the closure of our sit-down experience. And what we found is we saw an uplift in home delivery and drive-thrus. And so Burger King was very fortunate that we could offer our guests a safe, contactless option to deliver our food while keeping our employees and customers safe. So what we've experienced is that people are home more. They don't necessarily cook more at home. That was the one area, I think, during the first initial lockdown phase, people were forced to cook at home more. And as soon as we moved to opening up, first our drive-thrus were allowed to, and first deliveries were allowed to open, and then drive-thrus were allowed to open, we saw a very big spike in those two modes of service. And then the other area that we opened was curbside. So what I think is people found curbside very much a convenient way of pre-ordering their food and collecting their food without actually speaking or touching to other guests, and have minimal contact with one of our cashiers. So for us, immediate impact definitely affected our sit down. However, I think people are back to, I would say, the new normal of ordering food from us, but changing the service mode of how they order food.
Yeah, I think the convenience factor is always going to be there as well, isn't it? The fact of being stuck at home and doing the same thing and then having to cook a meal as well is probably not that attractive. I know in Australia, just talking about brand for a second, McDonald's over here has launched an attack on Hungry Jack's, which is our version, I think, of Burger King here in Australia, because of the Big Jack burger, which sounds very similar to the Big Mac burger, and something about trade infringements or them looking the same. Do you feel, as Elna, that brands, especially in a competitive market like burgers or fast food, actually need to be more competitive nowadays to kind of stand out and sort of increase exposure during and post-COVID?
Yeah. So, the nature of business is competitive. We are competing against similar brands. We compete for market share, media space, all the way down to competing for employee talent. And all of the competitiveness is really to compete for the customer's attention, the customer's consideration, and then hopefully the customer's purchases. Being competitive is good for brands. I really believe that. But I think being competitive is even better for the consumer. The consumer benefits from a competitive pricing and competing brand values, because competitive brands have to deliver on their brand promise. And that means consistent improvement in product quality and customer service. It also means more efficient use of marketing tools. And that for the customer means less advertising that are cluttered and irrelevant for you.
Omnichannel is an interesting one. I haven't sort of seen that as much, but obviously it's very, very prominent in the business to consumer market. I think, Marut, as well for you, delivering that experience, that's personal and customer centric for pharmaceutical is very, very much on the cards for everybody. And you mentioned a little bit in your presentation earlier. What initiatives have you seen in pharmaceutical around digital content factories, multi-channel exploration and things like that has been able to try and meet this demand of having a more customer-centric approach?
Yeah. So Tony, it's like this. B2B marketing was boring, right? I mean, when we used to think about as a marketer, there was always this sexy side of marketing, which was always B2C. So Burger King is a great example. Your FMCG products are a great example. Suddenly, with the constraints that have been put on B2B marketing and those funds being available now for experimenting, it's a marketeer's haven, right? I mean, you are really looking at, you have this pot of money that you can now go experiment with. So one, it brings with itself a huge pressure and demand on a marketer to be more innovative in a B2B space, but also an opportunity on how do you design or redesign, rethink the way you are marketing in a B2B environment. And to that extent, and in that context, this omni-channel marketing word has been used and abused a lot over the last 6 months, right? So we are seeing that pharmaceutical companies and even med device B2B companies are leveraging this shift to best of their advantage. But what we have seen, most of the companies where they're making mistakes is the siloed approach of they are using a channel, going heavy on a channel, investing largely on a channel, but they're not able to connect the overall consumer journey using digital and non-digital channels. And until you do that, the effect of this is going to be suboptimal, if you will, right? And pharmaceuticals company, for one, have moved really fast. I mean, like this, in March, they were required to move hundreds and thousands of these interactions that happened every year to digital. Without a way to capture the result of these interactions, it's going to be super difficult for them to use the data for any other purpose. So this omni-channel marketing acceleration that we have seen in pharmaceutical company and this connection being made to drive omni-channel experience is, I don't think any industry has seen the faster shift than pharmaceutical industry. Now, we are still behind the curve when you look at FMCG, but the quantum of shift or the percentage shift has just been phenomenally higher in our world.
Just a comment, talking about the omni-channel experience obviously requires a lot of digital marketing bandwidth, and a comment here: digital marketing is great, but with the heightened data costs in SA, we still are lagging behind. How can digital marketers really overcome this hurdle?
Yeah, I'll take a stab and maybe
you go first, and we'll jump into Zelna straight after.
Yeah. So listen, I don't think we have enough time to build those capabilities, right? Building those capabilities, honing up those skills, getting the right talent takes months and sometimes even years, right? So what we have seen working best is where organizations like Indegene are coming in to partner with these organizations and transferring skill set of what they've, for example, seen in US, in Europe, and taking that up into China and Japan and India or South Africa. That's the piece that we have seen work very well for pharma companies, and that's where the excitement is.
What about Zelna, you in like a B2C market? How do you think people can overcome the hurdle of these increased data costs?
Yeah, so I think you need to look at, yes, there is increased data costs, but I think you need to look at what marketing tools are available that will suit the size of your organization that your budget can afford. And I think there are fully functioning e-commerce platforms that are not very expensive, that offer a single view of your ordering channels, that seamlessly integrate with your marketing channels. And I think we've seen in South Africa that there are the companies who quickly shifted to digital ordering and who delivered a personalized digital communication were able to increase adoption and maintain their customer relationships. And they didn't do it with huge amount of expenses. It was a quick turnaround. They looked for South African companies that are agile and they could develop and build with them. So I think, yes, when you look at the tools available, I mean, we looked at a CRM system and I saw the cost of that CRM system and I thought, we can't afford it. And we just fell down. We look at your size of your guest, look at your MAUs, your monthly active users that you need to engage with. And with that, then go and not develop. Develop is expensive. I would say make use of tools that are available that fit the size of your monthly active users and fit the size of your organization. That's really important.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you make, because I was going to move on to technology platforms, because obviously, you know, keeping up with an omni-channel existence, you can't do it manually. You need to use the kind of the marketing technology that's out there. But interesting enough, 1 in 5 of the solutions on this year's MarTech landscape weren't there last year. The MarTech landscape is growing. There's now something like 8,000 solutions to choose from. So a question, firstly for you, as Ernest, and as you brought up the topic of MarTech, what technologies do you use and or recommend for marketing in 2020 and beyond?
So for me, let's start with a recommendation. So I would invest in tools that assist with personalization and tools that make the shopping experience easy and convenient. That means businesses need to adapt a strong e-commerce infrastructure that facilitates shopping in a safe environment, because safety is important, right? And it's going to remain important. Then it is important to understand your consumers' needs and track their behavior. I would recommend an analytical tool called Content Square. It's a cloud-based platform that helps businesses create better customer experience on web, mobile, and app. And then for data analytics, there's a product called ClickSense. It's a cloud analytical platform that combines AI and human intuition. Another analytical tool I really like is Marketo. They focus on creating online relationships. You can create personalized engagement across every touch point, like email, web, and mobile, and then measure your campaigns across these channels. So those for me are 3, I would say, marketing technology tools that are not that expensive and that will really help your entire online communication to make it personalized and measurable, which is going to be the key in growing your brand share of voice.
Awesome. An impressive marketing stack that you've got there. Maruk, can you do better than that? I mean, what are you using in the technology platform, space out of that 8,000 or so solutions that we're facing?
I will concede to Zelna on this one. I don't think the marketing stack that the pharma companies or the healthcare industry in general uses is even close to as robust as what she just described. We are boring. I mean, we go SFDC stack or Microsoft stack, right? I mean, given the amount of regulations that we have to go through, experimenting with some of these cool technologies, there's a little bit of hindrance. So no, I'm going to concede and say, you know what, Zelna, you did it right. Let's go with that.
Yeah, it's interesting. The interesting thing is there are a lot of comments online as well there on the chat about marketing automation. Like, it really is the tool. If we don't automate some of the stuff we're doing, it's very hard to create a seamless and frictionless omni-channel experience if we don't use some of the technology. Moving on to maybe technology innovation. So I don't know how you're going to go with this one, Marut, but thinking about things like AI, live chat, chatbots, making it really easy for the customer today that's a 24/7 customer to be able to reach out when they want to reach out. How's that impacting, firstly, the pharmaceutical industry?
Yeah, so that was a little easy because Indegene is actually a developer of some of these technologies, and so I can probably give you a better answer on this. See, AI is actually becoming a part of almost every process that a pharmaceutical company today is pushing. In some processes, it is driving efficiency. So, repurposing of marketing content. So today, if you look at agencies creating that content, every asset for every channel is rethought of, is recreated. But with AI, Indegene and some of the other companies have been able to create technology where you can reduce effort by at least 60% by reusing some of those images. So there's a model called Atom. Essentially, what Atom does, you break a piece of content into thousands of pieces, and you categorize and store them. So the next time when you create content, the system is able to pick up those individual pieces and combine them and form a piece of content which is probably 90% there. Right? So the amount of extra effort that is needed to create a piece of marketing content for a LinkedIn or a Facebook from a parent content is just way smaller. So this is one example on how AI is being used in our world for better results in marketing.
Yeah, sounds very exciting. I want to just move the conversation now to, we talked a lot about digital, kind of AI, all this wonderful experience, but we can't forget we still all live in the real world. We still live in the physical world. So maybe starting with you, Zelna, because you're in that kind of B2C space, how do you connect now this interest and growth in online with the physical in-store experience and making sure that that's seamless and connected?
Yes, well, it's very important that your online journey should follow the same customer interaction and experience as if the customer is standing in your environment, if that is a shop or a restaurant like ours. So it has to mimic that same experience. You need to ensure that each customer receives individualized attention. That can be done through chat features or personalized login experience. What we found is that a customer wants to be appreciated and remembered. So to maintain a consistent customer experience, you need to connect all your touch points and communicate and assist with one voice. So whenever a customer interacts, he receives the same level of experience and understanding as he would if he would stand right in front of you in a restaurant or in a shop.
Yeah, lovely. How does that, obviously, sometimes in B2C it can be more of a shortened buyer journey, but in pharmaceutical it can be a longer one because if you're having treatment or products and stuff like that, how do you find, Marut, that works for you in terms of avoiding fragmenting the buyer journey?
Yeah. So I think all the principles that Zelna spoke about apply to our world. I think what makes it a little bit more complex is that we look at our customers from two lenses. One, we look at the prescribing base, which is our doctors. So engaging them and having a consistency of touch point, consistency of message is one problem that we are dealing with. And what we are realizing more and more is that knowledge-based delivery of content is taking a much higher precedence than any other form of content delivery. So that is where we are leveraging consistency, key opinion leaders' messages, journals that kind of align with the pharma company's philosophy. So that are being used to create a common gold standard, if you will, and all the touch points are kind of congregating in that space. Patient communication is becoming much more trickier though. Now the intimacy between a physician and a patient is getting lost because most of the consultations are moving online or actually are being avoided. And that has been a much harder problem for us to solve. There are apps that are being created to kind of get away from those problems, but I don't think anybody right now has a solution that has replaced the in-person model to a digital model. There are some efforts and models, but nothing has been really successful at this point.
Marut, I just wanted to, an interesting point that you made there about the relationship, and I was wondering if you guys have had a look at virtual and augmented reality tools. Because the AR and VR, they can expand to improving that, not only the safety and efficiency in the workplace, but also what I found is with AR and VR, it assists with training videos or that communication, because it's got this enhanced remote assistance where it provides a live video experience and that it enables participants to add annotations that makes the experience much more real. So I wonder if that isn't an opportunity for the pharmaceutical company to look at virtual and augmented reality.
Yeah, well, that's a great idea. And my role before what I'm doing today was I was the chief marketing officer for GE Healthcare, which is a device company, and we actually tried using those solutions about 3 years ago for training and for installation of devices. And that idea was probably ahead of its time at that point. But I love your thought, and I know I want to call my last boss and tell him, you know what, now is the time, go try it again. It may give you much more. But we are for patient communication, mechanism of action of the dog. So very interesting ideas. We've tried it, not a lot of success, but maybe now is the time.
Maybe they've developed. I'm just wondering, like maybe from a sales perspective, because IR supports remote selling now, because I think they've started enriching the remote experience by allowing consumers to interact in their own space, and that will allow that better interaction, possibly.
You give me weekend assignment, so now I have to think about it all weekend.
It'd be nice for you to do that and share that with us when we do the next session together, because the VR and your augmented reality that you're talking about there, Azana, it's been around for so long, but it's not really been embraced, has it? It's not really been, and pharmaceutical sounds like the ideal platform to be able to really start to take that. It really needs an industry to take it forward for then others to follow, I think, like most trends do.
Absolutely.
Just opening up the conversation again, we've got about 10 minutes left. So if you do have questions, we had a few on the chat before. Please jump into chat and have some questions for our wonderful panelists today. Here's one just off the bat that's just come through, probably for you, Marut, because it's relates to kind of pharmaceutical and medical. Is Dr. Google causing any headaches for healthcare?
You know, it's funny. Dr. Google has existed for way too long, and you know, it has always been. You know, as they say, limited knowledge is dangerous, and I don't think things have changed post-COVID. I mean, there's always been a problem. It will continue to be a problem in the foreseeable future. And as these new generation of kids they come up, I'm sure they're gonna continue to use Google to annoy the doctors. But I just hope that doctors would hold steadfast and do what's right and not give in to the pressure. I don't know. I don't have a better answer for you, but it's always been there, and I don't anticipate it going away anywhere anytime soon.
It's funny because in Australia there's a young doctor that I go and see every now and again, and he actually uses Google as well to support some of his research. So even he's using it. So I think it's definitely here to stay. But I much prefer a medical person using it than someone that's not qualified. Absolutely.
I promise you, he understands it much differently than you understand it.
That's right. He does. He knows what to Google search for one thing. So a question for both of you as we get towards the end of our great conversation today. Could anyone share some marketing strategies, channels, or some insights that they know of, and would be helpful for others to use? So maybe just something that you found has worked, especially over this last 6 to 9 months of COVID. Just it could be something very small, but you've seen it's moved the needle for you. Azana, maybe start with you if you've got anything off the top of your head that you could share with folks.
Sure. So, any advice that I can give is focus on highly personalized experiences that connect emotionally with your customers. We've heard the word empathy and understanding during COVID quite regularly, right? So understand your consumers better and have empathy for what they are experiencing. And the way to authentically use that to promote your business, or by using your customer's experience to talk about the benefits of your product. So, and what I'm referring to is user-generated content. So content created by your customers is much easier method of persuasion than your own videos to talk about how amazing our product is. For us, we found that user-generated content builds trust in our brand. And in fact, studies have shown that 92% of consumers trust recommendations from people they don't know over branded content. So, and this includes social media sharing, online reviews, customers sharing videos of themselves enjoying your product. So, don't be afraid. There was always this thing about, oh my goodness, what if someone shares a bad review? Bad reviews aren't bad reviews. Bad reviews is an opportunity for you to comment, to correct, and to improve your brand. So I really would, as a recommendation, I would say invest and start using, developing user-generated content and embrace it. That's one of the areas that I think has benefited us very well.
Yeah, I think that's such sound advice, especially, it was popular before COVID, but even during COVID, when we've all been in lockdown together, we've all, suffered together, there's even more so for a brand to be more transparent and for customers to kind of tell the story more than us. And I think also the fact that we can shoot video now on an iPhone and it's acceptable, whereas before it had to be professionally produced with lighting and sound and everything. So I think that's great advice. Marut, anything to add from your toolbox of ideas for marketing tips?
Yeah, listen, before I get to that, I think this is, I mean, I know you guys thought about this when you crafted this. You have two completely different set of industries, and so they are contrasting at many levels. But when you really think about it, and I was just thinking when Zenla was replying on the user-generated content, how so relevant these strategies are across different segments.
All industries.
Yeah, so there is a lot of convergence as a marketer that you can drive. So only thing I'll change in our setup to what you said, Zenla, is that yes, user-generated content is super important, but in our world, if that content comes from a key opinion leader in the industry, a doctor who has spent 30 years trying to study a particular therapy area, but again, still user-generated content, and they talking about potency of a drug or mechanism of action of a drug, the acceptability of that with the younger doctors is just phenomenally high. So what we have seen is the number of webinars that we are able to create and interest that it generates when a key opinion leader is talking is just very, very different from any of the older methods that we use. So yes, user-generated content. Look at the KOLs who are who are the industry leaders, and then if you can create close communities using tools like webinar, I think they have been super helpful over the last few months.
Yeah, awesome advice, guys. Thank you. A bit of two contradicting kind of comments in the chat here. One we have from Sophia: marketing is now just all about attention. If you grab the attention, you've won. And then somebody else is saying, have you noticed a marked increase in bulk SMS and email marketing? So, what is good attention? Is it just about getting attention? Is it just about rising above, the sea of sameness and being seen? Or is there a little bit more depth in the communication that we need to deliver these days to actually engage with the customer and the consumer?
Oh, I think Zenla dropped.
It looks like it's you.
It's probably me, yeah. Listen, I think this conundrum has been haunting marketers for a very, very long time, that what is it that you really focus on, the quality of communication or the quantity of communication? And to be honest with you, the answer lies in what your brand represents. If your brand, and again, I'm going to try to dovetail it with my side of the world. If you are a specialty brand, you are appealing to a very niche set of doctors who can use that therapy, then your emailers, bulk messages, I mean, as much as you can put money into it, they're not really going to help you. It's the specific targeted communication backed by solid scientific evidence is what's going to help you grab eyeballs. The KOLs who affirm and talk about your brand, that's going to grab eyeballs. But if you're marketing for a broad-based paracetamol brand, again, then it's a completely different ball game. So I would say it's horses for courses. Neither is a bad strategy. It just depends upon what you're trying to achieve and what your target audience is.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe turning to you, Azana. I mean, you're in that consumer brand. It's very much about product and price. Is it a volume thing? Are you just marketing to the masses?
No, it's definitely not marketing to the masses. COVID has brought in some changes, definitely. But for us, COVID brought in an opportunity. And what I would say is, first of all, recognize the change in the shopping patterns of your consumers and adapt your strategy to fit into those changes. In many industries, the method of purchase has changed. The time available to shop have changed, and the financial effects of COVID has had a big impact on South African consumers. But in that lies a really big opportunity. You need to audience that have come to the shifts in behavior during this time. For example, look for new occasions, new rituals, and include online shopping. As you look for these new audiences, it is really important to gain a competitive advantage. And the best way to do that is to first focus on your brand and quality perceptions, and then focus on the strategies to increase your share of voice. So with that comes a focused strategy. It's definitely not just a bulk messaging out there. Look for those, I would say, those individual segmentation groups, look for those audiences, and again, they find the opportunity to look for a new growth audience that have come about with COVID.
Yeah, very, very important. It almost goes back to basics in some way as well, isn't it? The buyer persona, who's our target market, who are the lower hanging fruit, and that's changed probably a lot for brands as well. Like there's been this pivoting that's kind of happened where new markets now are available that maybe weren't on the target there before. Just kind of wrapping up, I just wanted to probably give both of you the opportunity to maybe share as we move out of 2020. Goodness knows where the year's gone, but it's almost the end of the year. Let's look to a positive 2021. What do you believe marketers need to do plan now for 2021 to prioritize digital journeys and new ways to engage so tremendously and closely with consumers and deliver that experience next year? What would be your kind of one key advice? Who wants to go first?
I'll take a shot. Listen, couple of things. One, the investments that have been made in digital, don't squander it. Right? I mean, for whatever it is worth, you may change your strategy, you may pivot a little bit, but that omni-channel marketing that has got introduced because of COVID, don't give up those gains, right? I mean, especially in the industry that we are in, these shifts and these trends take a very, very long time to develop. COVID just accelerated it. So the faster you can adopt, the more resilient you can be to go back to the older habits. That's what's going to determine your future mix of how you spend your marketing dollars and what returns you get. Second, don't shy away from the ROI discussions. It was fairly easy to calculate ROI in a less complicated world, if you will. It is more complicated now, but the sooner you get used to the idea of ROI, the sooner you get comfortable with having those discussions with your CFOs, the better marketer you will come out of when this whole thing ends, and hopefully 2021.
Great advice. Zelna, the last words from you.
Yeah, so I mean, we've been in a similar situation before. I call this like a break, almost like a recession. It happened in the 90s, it happened in the 2000s, and it happened in 2008, correct? So, the chances are it can happen again. For me, if I can say to you, brands that focus on increasing relative share of voice, perceived share of voice, and product quality perceptions are more successful. This is a time to re-look at how do you drive your product quality messaging. It is not a time to stop investing. It's not a time to change the complete strategy. Focus on your core values, continue to what you're doing. Just remember that you need to recognize if there were changes in your business environment for shoppers that change their behavior. Adapt your strategy to change behaviors. But to gain a competitive advantage during a recession of these types is focus on increasing your share of voice. And you do that with quality product, quality communication.
Very good advice from both of you. Obviously, having a very agile approach is what we need to, because who knows what's around the corner and what's happening. The old thick 30-page marketing plan for the next 5 years is out the door. I think that's changed into this agile playbook that we all need to work on. But really enjoyed our conversation, and thanks very much for everybody for interacting on chat. Zelna Jones, Group Marketing Executive, Burger King, South Africa, and Marit Setia, Senior Vice President, Growth Markets in Indogene, India. Thank you both for joining us and being part of our great panel today.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.
Loved it.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Tony. Bye.
Thank you.